That went over wonderfully well. But some of the other jokes fell kind of flat, and there was some thought that maybe Billy was not giving it the same sort of enthusiastic performance that he usually does. Is Billy Crystal going to be back to host the Oscars next year? The betting right now is that he won't be. But I tell you what, one thing that a lot of people are not thinking about, next summer, Billy Crystal has a new movie coming out, the sequel to City Slickers, so maybe he will host the Oscars, if nothing else, but to promote that movie coming out.
Yeah, and also he'll be bigger than ever.
Right, exactly right.
Okay, and what about Marissa Tomei?
She is the nicest person in the world, Joan. You have never met a sweeter, more genuine. People were so thrilled when she won because she really is so nice. And now she's not only nice, she is going to be one very wealthy young woman. Her win in the Best Supporting Actress category has literally vaulted her $1 million smile into the $1 million category. This was an actress who was earning money in the high six figures. Well, her salary is now in the $1 million range, not just $1 million, several million. If you want Marissa in your next movie, be prepared to pony it up, and a lot of producers are.
I already saw it. What about Emma Thompson, who actually looked surprised, if I remember?
Emma Thompson was genuinely shocked.
How could she be genuinely surprised when everybody said she's going to win, when every cover said she's going to win?
Well, you know, I had a chance to talk to her.
Doesn't she read?
That's a very good point. I had a chance to talk to her just as she was walking into the Dorothy Chandler, and maybe she was saying that, frankly, she hoped that she wouldn't win because then she would generate all that, she said in that lovely British accent, all that marvelous sympathy. Afterwards, once she won, I asked her about that. I said, gee, do you still wish you hadn't won? And she laughed and said, I take that back. A lot of people were wondering with Emma why her husband, Kenneth Branagh, was not with her. He, of course, is the big shot Shakespearean actor. He was doing a Shakespearean play in London, and the Royal Shakespeare Company wouldn't give him the night off. And then the other thing is that he wasn't even able to watch her Oscar win in their own home because in England they don't have cable TV. They have a thing called satellite television. Well, Emma and Kenneth don't have it. Emma says now that such important things as her winning an Oscar are on TV, she's going to make sure that they get it.
Yeah, what a pity. What about Gina Davis?
Gina Davis, who looked her dress kind of defied...
Some difference from last year.
Yeah.
She looked great this year.
Her
she
dress
could nurse a child, but she looked great.
Her dress kind of defied gravity, don't you think?
Yeah, sure.
It was very interesting. Anyway, both Gina Davis and Michelle Pfeiffer, who was also absolutely beautiful, you know, there was super security at the Oscars this year, but I noticed that in both cases with those two actresses, in addition to all the security everywhere else, they had their own individual bodyguards, and they had several of them. It was really odd. It was kind of like watching a president or something. They were absolutely covered with security, more so than any of the other stars there.
So do you think that maybe there have been threats, or
I honestly don't know, but it certainly stuck out in my mind and other people as well. Why are these people being so protected in such a particular and special way? Gina Davis, of course, has had a personal relationship with a security consultant, Gavin DeBecker.
Yes.
I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but both of them had, I mean, there was top security everywhere. They had super-duper security.
Now, what about Woody Harrelson?
Now, Woody Harrelson, of course, the actor from the TV show Cheers, he has got a big movie career, but he may have made kind of a movie mistake. There's a new movie coming out with Mary Stuart Masterson and Johnny Depp. It's called Benny and June, and Woody Harrelson was supposed to be the third star. Well, Woody Harrelson bailed out at the very last minute to star in another movie. As it turns out, the Benny and June movie is absolutely terrific. It's a great film, and Woody really should have been in it. Aidan Quinn does a great job in the Woody Harrelson role, but this was a great movie and a great part to blow off. Instead, he's in a new movie with Robert Redford and Demi Moore. It's called Indecent Proposal. I have not seen it yet, but people who have seen it tell me he does not fare particularly well in it. So maybe Woody made kind of a bad career decision.
Boy, and once you do those decisions, that's it for life. Speaking about Cheers...
Well, this, Joan, is one of those things, this could be the biggest scoop of all time right here on the Joan Rivers Show, but of course, we're not entirely sure. A lot of people say that President Clinton will appear on the final episode of Cheers, and he, of course, will be playing President Clinton. But he actually will appear on the last episode. I find that almost impossible to believe, but people on the set of the show swear that it's true, that you will see Clinton in the last episode of Cheers.
Boy, if that's true, that's some coup.
That is really.
And if they get him, maybe they can get Hillary.
There you go. That's exactly right.
I know you're not going to be back at the end of the show, so I thank you right now, and I will see you very soon again.
That's great. Okay.
Okay, and when we come back, we're going to come back with a revealing look at royal women from Hollywood to Buckingham Palace, so stay with us. Well, we'll get that right out in the show. The stormy breakup of the marriage of Charles and Diana has been probably the biggest scandal that hit the newspapers in 40 years. It was triggered by the tell-all biography, Diana, Her True Story, which has now been made into a television miniseries and can be seen this Sunday and Monday on NBC. And, by the way, People magazine already gave it an A. Isn't that great? Let's take a look.
Yeah, whatever happens, I will always love you. I have to go now. Yes, now.
Yes, now might be a really good idea, Charles. How long is this going to go on?
I don't know what you're talking about.
No matter what happens, I will always love you.
And so I will. She and I are best friends.
But I thought I was supposed to be your best friend.
No, you are supposed to be my wife.
Oh, that poor thing. My first guest responsible for breaking the story, from revealing the royal couple's infidelities, Diana's bulimia, her numerous suicide attempts. Please welcome the author of Diana, Her True Story, Andrew Morton. And nice to have you back.
Nice to see you again.
It's just about a year ago the book came out, because I was in England.
No, it's only 8 months.
8 months.
It seems like a lifetime, doesn't
lifetime. I remember we couldn't get the book, and I got the book, and I was hysterical.
Yeah. And so much has happened since then as well.
Did you anticipate the book would be the one that would smash everything down, just really start all this?
No, although when I bought that box of matches and decided to burn down Windsor Castle, because the sales were going badly then. I mean, it's been a remarkable year. I could never have anticipated the squidgy tapes, the Camilla tapes, the Queen paying tax, Windsor Castle burning down. All those things have conspired to make 1992 possibly the biggest royal year in this century.
In the century. What about the miniseries? Now, are you happy with it?
Oh, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
If you saw that scene there, that was quite a dramatic scene.
Yeah.
But the irony is, I think Prince Charles comes off worse in the book than he comes off in the film. It's quite a sympathetic portrait to Prince Charles in the film.
Do you think
Although I like the wig. I like Diana's wig.
Diana's wig was very
special
good.
credit for that.
But what about Charles? Do you think he shouldn't come off sympathetically? Do you think she truly is this poor, maligned lady?
Well, certainly she's had a hard time. Let's face it, from the word go, there's been another woman in Prince Charles's life, Camilla Parker Bowles. That we all know about now.
Right.
And remember, only 8 months ago, people were in the dark about it. And now they can see Diana's actions in context. They can see why she's been driven to this jealousy, these rages, this indifference as well towards Prince Charles over the years.
But didn't she know, again, when you marry a royal person, this is it?
Remember,
Was she that dumb when she got married? She thought it's going to be happily ever after?
well, she was that simple. She was that naive.
How could she be growing up in those circles?
Well, she was, what, 20? She was a naive 20. Even her headmistress said that she was a very naive 20-year-old. And remember, she was becoming increasingly suspicious as the days drew to the wedding at St. Paul's Cathedral. She was wanting to call it off. And when she realised that Charles was giving Camilla that bracelet, F and G, Fred and Gladys, she wanted to call the whole thing off because she was so suspicious of Camilla. And that shadow has really wrecked their marriage. It's been an intractable triangle, an unworkable triangle.
Well, now, what about her? She's probably the most eligible woman in the world today, right?
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
I mean, every man's fantasy now is, I'll meet Princess Diana. Is she dating?
Well, not at the moment. She's very much anti-men at the moment. Remember, the separation just happened a couple of months ago, and she's really licking her wounds emotionally, because she's not just a princess, she's a human being. She's got to come to terms with life alone. And she's surrounding herself with all her girlfriends these days. She's skiing at the moment with some girlfriends.
But there were men in her life before that she wasn't sitting home. We had the squidgy tapes.
We've got the squidgy tapes. We've got her friendship with Major James Hewitt.
Yeah.
Her friendship with a bodyguard.
So, I mean, it's not that she was sitting home and said, gee, now I think I'll date. I mean, she had outfits going before.
No, absolutely. And in fact, in the next few months, there'll be some little black book in London with somebody's name in it.
Yeah.
And maybe that will be the one that will be linked to Diana. But at the moment, every time she goes outside of Kensington Palace, there are paparazzi photographers following her on motorbikes, in cars. They're using their scanners. They've all learnt it now. They're using scanners to monitor the telephone calls made by the various Royal Protection Squads, so they know where she's eating. They're trawling up and down the trendy King's Road in London, looking for any sign of Diana. They're following James Gilby. And so, obviously, for Diana, it's like being in an open prison.
On the squidgy tape, she revealed that she was scared she was pregnant that time, right? With his baby or with somebody else's baby? She must have slept with somebody else. She was worried.
She was saying she didn't want to get pregnant. I think she was talking about Prince Charles, the fact that the relationship with Prince Charles was so much down the pan that she didn't want to get pregnant by him, because at the time it was winter 1989, and at that time there was a talk of a rapprochement between Charles and Diana. She was under a lot of pressure from her own family, from her mother, from the Queen, to have another child, to try and seal this relationship which was fast breaking down. So I would reckon it was she didn't want another baby by Prince Charles. Obviously, she's now 31. She will want more children.
Yeah. What about Prince Charles now? His whole chance of becoming king. Do you think this has damaged it tremendously? I mean, everybody said, the whole royal family, just in the last 8 months, it's jokes now, you know.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the latest opinion poll in Britain showed that something like only 4 out of 100 believe that Prince Charles was the most popular member of the royal family. But the interesting thing is this. He's rebuilding his image at the moment. He went over to Bosnia the other week. He went to see the British troops there. He went to Warrington last week to see the victims of the bomb attack that killed those 2 youngsters. Right. He's making speeches. He wants to be the Green Prince. So obviously he wants the top job. He's given up polo so he can spend more time with his children. So talk of the Queen stepping down for Prince Charles, I think, is misguided. But Prince Charles himself, he's decided that he wants to be king.
That's a whole different thing. What about Diana? You said in your book, and do you still think, I think you said in your book, and you said it since, that she never really thought she was going to be queen. How could that? But when she married him, she thought she was going to be queen, right? Thought it was a whole big romance.
When she walked down the aisle at St. Paul's Cathedral, she believed that she would never become queen. She's a woman who has a great sense of instinct and a great sense of destiny. Remember, the day before her father had a huge brain hemorrhage, she knew that was going to happen. She almost has second sight to a degree, and she's always believed that she will never become queen. It's a belief, by the way, that Fergie shares, and it's all her astrologers, because she sees all these astrologers all the time. They believe that she will never become queen. What she sees her destiny is doing is grooming William and Harry for their eventual doom, I think, as the future King of England.
Yeah, God. You'll stay tuned. We'll be back with more. And when we come back, we're going to be joined by someone who always has the inside story in the royals, both British and in Hollywood. So stay with us. Free tickets, send a self-addressed stamped envelope to Tickets, The Joan Rivers Show, Columbus Circle Station, P.O. Box 20701, New York, New York 10023, or call 212-975-5757. Now is a woman who knows all about the scandals, the fashions, and the fortunes of the Royals family. Please welcome one of the great queens of gossip, New York Newsday's columnist Liz Smith. Nice to have you on. Now, which we're going to get to, you have playing cards out about the royal family. I want to ask you, we're talking about all these great queens, of royal queens. What about Fergie now? What's going on with Fergie?
Well, Fergie just got downgraded, too, out of the millionaire class for divorce and separation. I mean, she isn't even going to get $1 million.
How can they do that to her, though?
Well, they don't call her Thunder Thighs for nothing.
But what is that going to do with bringing up the
never quite measured up, I think. Maybe Mr. Morton would agree with me.
Well, she's given a couple of interviews last week where she's admitted for the first time, I've messed up my life. And she's realised that 99% 1992 was the worst year of her life, and she's determined to try and do something about it. But, of course, her great friend John Bryant, the toe-sucking, lip-smacking, hip-swinging character, he's doing all the negotiations on her behalf, and he's really sticking his feet into it these days, because she was due to go on the cover of a magazine on Harper's and Queen, and then his negotiation, he wanted so much money that they called the whole thing off. So, you know, the result was that Fergie lost a chance of rehabilitating herself.
I think she should come to America. She might work very well here.
Oh, I think she would work great in New York.
She's sort of more vulgar enough for us.
Yeah, and also, we're just so happy to have anybody named Princess or Queen at a party, you know what I mean?
She was a duchess, not a princess.
Duchess, whatever she was. You call her in Three Dogs Show. Who is she dating now?
Well, I think she's still
John Bryant.
That's the man who was photographed sucking her toes.
Yeah.
The financial advisor, and who warned her, what goes up must inevitably come down.
Now, what about Andrew, poor thing? Have you any scoops on him?
He's seeing a lady called... Sorry, go on, Liz.
This guy knows everything. No, I don't know who he's seeing, but, you know, I was told that they remained friendly, Andrew and Fergie, and she said he was her biggest supporter and so forth.
Right.
So I don't know whether that's still true. I would think he would feel pretty chagrined.
What about, you've heard she is going out with somebody?
Yeah, seeing a girl called Katrina Scapper, who's been a friend of Lord Linley, the son of Princess Margaret. And there's a picture in the paper of him leaving her flat at 1:40 in the morning and her waving as he left.
Right.
Drove off into the night.
So there's happiness for him.
Well,
thank God.
She's a bit on the slim side. I mean, she makes you look like Roseanne Barr. So I'm afraid that people are saying that she's not exactly the girl for him.
Oh, because he likes him chubby.
Yeah.
Now, what about the cards? Explain this to me. What are these?
Well, there's a company called Press Pass down in Dallas. They decided they'd bring out cards about the royal family. You know, like baseball cards.
Right.
And you buy 9 of them in a foil package, like this little deal here. And until you collect them all, 110 of these little beauties. And they've got scandal. They've got fashion.
Well, they've got a pretty picture of Diana, and then on the back of it says what? This is your favorite, right? They told me.
That's my favorite.
Why?
I can't remember why. Oh, yes, this is a great one. She met Princess Grace, and Princess Grace before she died, of course. And they were at a dinner, and Princess Grace took her off, and they had a little heart-to-heart. She told Princess Grace how horrible it was to be a princess, but Princess Grace already knew this, and she said, don't worry, it'll get worse.
Did Grace think it was terrible to be a princess? That sort of, again, really is Hollywood royalty.
Well,
did you know her?
I didn't know that she thought it was terrible. I thought she did a great job. She put Monaco on the map, and that's hard since it's only about as big as a dot.
Yeah.
And it certainly has fallen into disrepair since she died.
Yeah, so obviously she had... But did she enjoy it? I mean, did you ever interview her?
I did, but, she was very sort of comme il faut in the establishment by then, so she wouldn't have said if she didn't.
Very grand. Now, what about, speaking about
establishment... But as you used to say about Jackie Onassis marrying Aristotle Onassis, I often thought that it couldn't have been too romantic to have married Prince Rainier.
No, but then again, you get to see a picture on a teacup, and that's nice. Or an ashtray. Now, this is another one that I did laugh when I was going through this card here. This is the Queen.
Oh, yeah,
this is mean to do to this poor lady.
The Queen, picking her nose.
Yes.
Well, it's mostly about, that card's mostly about how rich the Queen is.
That she can use gloves?
Well, maybe that's why they invented gloves. Who knows? But anyway, the Queen is worth $14 billion, according to whatever we were told, though we heard later that Prince Edward said that was bull.
Yeah. But things like this, do you think, as an Englishman, this should be allowed? I mean, don't you think this poor woman should be allowed if she has a little buggy in her nose just to go on the sidewalk?
Spy has a picture of Henry Kissinger picking his nose.
I know. I mean, there's just no... There's no place to hide anymore.
At official banquets, they stop photographers from taking pictures of them eating and picking their nose and scratching and so on. But, I mean, there's all kinds of...
The long telephoto lens has done a lot of them in. Did this royal family in?
Yes.
I mean, the pictures of Fergie, the pictures of Princess Margaret, remember her long ago. She was already leading the way for everybody.
What about, you mentioned Prince Edward. What's the story there? Do you have any scoops on him?
I don't have any scoops on him. He's a nice young man who's in the theater. He didn't want to be a Marine.
Yeah, well, maybe now he would want to.
Well, I mean, you know, I mean, in England, they're getting out of the service if they're gay. So, you know, here they want to get in.
Come over here and join, yes.
He's going out with a girl called Ruthie Henshaw, who's the star of a new West End musical, or new to the West End anyway. It's Crazy for You. And I know you've always said that he's a bit light in the loafers.
Light in the loafers? You have to pull him down to change his diaper. You know, go on.
Well, at the weekend, a lady called Romy Adlington, who's a model, she was saying that she actually made love to him at Buckingham Palace whilst the Queen was in residence. Now, her testimony may be suspect because a couple of years ago she said he tried it on, but she said no. Now, I think that checks have changed hands, and she's now saying, yes, they went to bed together, but he was a little bit inexperienced.
So, you know, we're talking about a little...
This is called image building.
Yes, we are talking about royalty, right? But let's get a little bit into Hollywood royalty. And when we come back, now we're going to talk about a different kind of royalty. As I just said, Hollywood royalty, and one of its most important members, Marilyn Monroe, because there's lots of new stuff that's suddenly come out about her life that just gets you crazy. So stay tuned. Talking about royalty. So now let's talk about, as I said right before commercial, Hollywood royalty. Starting with Marilyn Monroe. During her lifetime, as we all know, Monroe was the undisputed queen of Hollywood. She had that certain, I don't know, sexy something that's just fascinated and enthralled millions and millions of people.
A kiss on the hand may be quite continental, but diamonds are a girl's best friend.
You don't want to marry my son for his money?
I want to marry him for your money. But square cut or pear shape, these rocks don't lose their shape. Diamonds are a girl's best friend. Tiffany's.
I'd like to present to you the Look Achievement Award. It's the most outstanding feminine newcomer.
Cartier.
Best young box office personality.
I present this citation, the most popular actress of the year.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Mr. Sanders. Black Star, Ross, Gorham. Talk to me, Harry Winston. Tell me all about it. You might not marry a girl just because she's pretty. But my goodness, doesn't it help?
A talk show exclusive is the author of a new book on Marilyn Monroe, which reveals the untold, horrific facts about her death. Please welcome back to our show, Donald Spoto. How nice to have you back. You have brand new and very, very solid information on her death. How did you find all this out?
It was part and parcel of an entire series of archives that were turned over to me. But specifically about the death, Joan, the interesting thing is that most of the facts surrounding her death have been available to any serious writer who's wanted to tell the story for 31 years. Marilyn has, alas, been subjected to a political agenda, a whole series of political agendas. But for anyone who's wanted to do the work, the papers have been there. I had access to another set of diaries and letters and family documents that enabled me to flesh out the story of her entire life and family history, as well as the end.
So let's go first to the end. She wasn't killed by, you're saying in the book she was not killed by JFK and Robert Kennedy.
This is absolute rubbish. For one thing, there is not a single shred of evidence, nor a single credible witness to such a thing. Quite the contrary, Joan. As a matter of fact, everyone who knew the Kennedys, everyone who knew Marilyn, everyone who was close to Marilyn, knows that this rumor, this whole series of fabrications didn't start until long after she was dead, until long after Bobby Kennedy was dead.
So how did she die? She's dead.
Sure, very much.
So how did she die?
Marilyn died in a tragic incident, the result of a an enema given to her that contained a massive dose of chloral hydrate. Chloral hydrate was usually given to her orally as a sleeping tablet, sleeping draft. It is, in fact, Mickey Finn, knockout drops. This was given to her in a massive infusion, and chloral hydrate interferes with the enzymes that the body produces that are necessary to metabolize Nembutal, which she had taken as a tranquilizer during the day, for which her body had built up a considerable tolerance. The chloral hydrate
she took a lot of Nembutal.
She had taken Nembutal during the day as a tranquilizer. Right. And then her housekeeper, at the orders, acting on the orders of her psychiatrist, gave her what is called a transrectal infusion, an enema, in which the chloral hydrate capsules are open and mixed in water. The tragedy here is when you do that, you cannot titrate, you cannot gauge the dosage of this medicine, and it was that pitched her over the edge and alas, resulted in her death.
Why didn't they just come out and say this? There was all these autopsies, everybody was running around, the coroner was running around. Why does this not come out? I think
there are two reasons. One of which is that Marilyn has been subjected to this terrible political agenda. People would rather believe this myth about the Kennedys. It's all part of a Kennedy bashing. Part two is nobody has seriously looked at the coroner's reports. No one has done the serious hard work that every writer, every biographer must do, which is to talk to everyone involved in the inquest, the coroner, the autopsy, the people who were involved in her life the days before she died. This is this is basic research.
You're the first one that really did this.
So it seems. I mean, there's the truth, documented to almost 100 pages at the end of our book.
Why didn't the doctor come forward? Was he scared he'd be arrested?
Well, it may have been partly that, but it certainly was. I think his career would have certainly been over. I mean, to put in medical care of a woman someone who has no medical training, who's not a nurse, and that, alas, was the housekeeper, who was not a high school graduate, who had no medical training, and for her to be asked to do so delicate a task is, we'd have to say, reckless.
Yeah,
at the least reckless.
What about the other things you found out? The other thing which made headlines in New York City, that Marilyn was going to remarry Joe DiMaggio?
Well, this is the fact of the matter. Marilyn had her dress fitted by the great Elizabeth Courtney. She had ordered the wine and the food from Briggs Emporium on nearby San Vicente Boulevard. She had told a furniture salesman who was a good buddy of hers in West Hollywood. There were invitations out to a very small circle of people. The airline tickets were bought for them to go on the red eye that Wednesday night to come to New York. They were going to see the Strasbergs. They were going for a brief honeymoon to Long Island. And Thursday afternoon, she had an appointment in the offices of Julie Stein to talk about doing a musical based on A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. Once again, this is, it's astonished me that it hasn't come out over the years.
You found a piece of physical evidence, a note to Joe DiMaggio saying...
Yes, indeed. It was a note that Marilyn was writing certainly that afternoon, possibly during the last hour of her life. It's hard to tell.
Said?
Well, it said, Dear Joe, the one great thing in life is to make one person completely happy. I would like that to be you, and at that point the note stopped, and the hand goes down in a line.
So you don't know if she was writing it when she...
It's entirely possible, but we have the note. It's in her hand.
Why, again, has this all taken so long to come out?
I think, Joan...
The people were invited to the wedding. Why hasn't someone stepped forward and said, well, now, wait a second. Marilyn was on the phone and said she and Joe were getting married. Also, even more important, Joe DiMaggio, which you talk about in your book, beat her up.
Well, this is...
Why would she go to...
This is 8 years earlier, when...
So she took boxing lessons?
As a matter of fact, those 8 years had produced a terrific change in personality in both of them.
Yeah.
Their marriage was not a success in 1954 because fame, as my two colleagues here know very well, is a very, very heavy mantle to bear. And the fact of the matter is that both Marilyn and Joe had grown considerably. After her divorce from Arthur Miller in early 1961, when Marilyn was in hospital, when Marilyn was in trouble, Joe was always there. Joe was her friend, as well as her lover, as well as her rescuer. You see, for anyone to come forward with the facts about Joe destroys this nonsense about Robert Kennedy.
Right.
Absolute nonsense.
Well, I think the book is absolutely fascinating. I kept thinking, what's another Marilyn Monroe book going to tell me? And boy, it tells you a lot of things. And when we come back, we're going to talk about another member of Hollywood's royal family, Judy Garland, and then I want to get all these women together and find out what they've got in common. The real royals and the fake royals, because they're all messed up. We'll be right back.
never rains, but what it pours. If later luck should happen to desert you, a bit of rain is never gonna hurt you. So wait and the skies will be blue. It's never rains, but what it pours. So what if all your troubles come in bunches? Keep sticking to your silly little hunches, and the sun will come shining through.
From now on, you're going to be yourself. You're going to be perfectly natural.
I am?
You're going to start right from the beginning. There'll be no more fancy dresses and la-di-da business.
Mr.
She sure holds up. That was Judy Garland, and we're back talking about royal women from Buckingham Palace to Beverly Hills. Judy Garland, she could sing, she could dance, she could act. She had a magical effect on audiences, and her legend is still very much alive 20 years after her death. Joining me now is a man who has chronicled the amazing career of this princess of Hollywood in his new book called Judy Garland, the world's greatest entertainer. Please welcome, and I'm delighted to have you, John Fricke.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, we just found out about Marilyn Monroe. We found out a little bit of Princess Diana, a little bit about Fergie, things that are happening. Monroe. What don't we know about Judy?
Well, the intent of the book was to chronicle, as you said, what she accomplished, because there have been books about her private life.
Right.
But in this case, you've got to put the private life in as the mortar between the bricks so that people understand why things happened to her. And unfortunately, in her personal life, so much of Judy's luck was just bad, starting with her family. Her father and mother did not have a good marriage. He, according to family friends, was bisexual, which created a lot of problems, and the mother was always spiriting the kids away so they wouldn't be affected by this, and that's why the kids went on stage, Judy and her two sisters. Then, of course, when Judy went to Hollywood, she was surrounded by many, many different talented people, but again, men of
gay men.
Yeah, bisexual gay men, and establishing
welcome to show business.
live on our stage.
Welcome to the world. Go on. Yeah.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And so the trouble was, or one of the problems was, she would establish relationships with these people, some of them, fall in love with some of them, and it didn't give her the proper male-female balance always that she needed for her own stability. Bad luck with money. She worked and worked and worked and had nothing to show for it.
How could you have this major career, every single person's audience at least has heard a name, no matter what their age is?
Oh, certainly.
And die without money. It's impossible.
I think in her case it was a different era, number one. You didn't get as much money when she was paid for The Wizard of Oz total $9,600. Okay. That's all she ever made for The Wizard of Oz. There were no residuals at MGM for the movies she made.
Well, that was in the 30s, so that would be like about $14,000. Right?
And lunch.
Yeah, and lunch. Yeah, all right, yeah.
But beyond that, even when she was making top money as a concert and nightclub performer in the 50s and 60s and best-selling albums and the whole thing, I think Judy went out, unlike a lot of the major career women today who look after that, Judy went out and did the work, and she trusted people to take care of it. There's stories, you always hear horrible stories where people will couch them horribly about, oh, you know, Judy Garland didn't pay her hotel bill. She had to sneak out wearing 7 layers of clothes with the kids. The kids loved it. She made it a game, but it wouldn't do her reputation any good. She'd get the blame for it, but I'm sure she thought, I went out and sang. There are people who are supposed to be taking care of this. That's why I have managers or business agents or companions or whatever.
What about the companions? She was married how many times?
5 times. 5 times.
5 times. And a couple of them were again, homosexual.
Well, that's the story, yes.
Yeah.
You hear about it. And I think that certainly in her case it was a question of just wanting to be with somebody who she could have as a companion, somebody who would take care of her, somebody who would help her, somebody she could depend upon, the way we all do, whether you're male, female, gay, straight, whatever.
But now, you know, we talk about all these people now, whether they're real royalty or Hollywood royalty, they all have the same problems, don't they? They all have either bulimia with Princess Diana, right?
And overweight and underweight with Judy.
Overweight. You have major substance abuse in the case of 2 of them.
Yeah. Also, Fergie, again, up and down on the weight, up and down the weight.
I think there is so much pressure brought to bear. We were talking before the show about what these ladies have in common, and I think one of the things is they have this incredible and it's only a gift of God, this kind of charisma and this appeal to virtually everybody. And when you're under that kind of pressure to always be royalty, whether it's Buckingham Palace or Hollywood, to be at your best, to always be responsive, on top of things, it's incredible pressure. And you do need to just chill out once in a while, however you can do it.
Well, I think there's one factor which really has wrecked all their lives. Men. That's the one common characteristic.
Can a man deal with the stronger woman?
I think there's another factor here, Joan. The whole business of psychopharmacology and drug addiction is a lot more sophisticated now than it was in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And secondly, and I learned this when I was researching my biography of Tennessee Williams, there were, and alas still are, a number of doctors unscrupulously committed to having patients dependent on them by providing them with prescriptions and making them... We have schedules of drugs today, you know, Schedule 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. They didn't have them in those days. I mean, it was very fashionable in the 50s for people to say, oh, I have to take a Librium. I have to take a tranquilizer, a Miltown. That meant you had a glamorous, demanding life. Today, it means you're headed for tragedy.
Yeah.
Plus the fact was given drugs by MGM. I mean, MGM gave her drugs to keep her working.
And to keep her thin. Yes, as a teenager. Yes.
But isn't fame also a drug? The fact that you are on top of the pinnacle, that is also a drug in itself. And because you're famous and because you're charismatic, there's something where you're not earthed. You're at the top of the tree. You're no longer at the bottom, so you're no longer earthed in reality.
Well, and you have the pressure to stay there, yes.
Let's talk about, they didn't have the pressure yet. She's a bulimic, Princess Diana. Let's talk about why when we come back after this commercial. We'll be back with more in a moment. Talking about royal women from Hollywood to Buckingham Palace, and we were talking, again, Princess Diana, bulimic, Fergie, up and down, Marilyn always worried about the weight, Judy was like a joke.
Yes.
Now you see.
Well, she was only 4'11" tall, and so it was real easy for her to put on weight. And of course, the pressure at MGM, be camera thin, which meant 95 pounds.
Yeah.
And if you work 6 days a week, God knows how many hours a day, you're going to have to eat something to keep yourself going. So it was always a problem.
What about, go ahead.
You know, Joan, one of the reasons Princess Diana keeps coming out sort of like a heroine, even in the press pass cards, is that it was a sort of victim, I think, in a way. She marries this prince who's going to be the king, and he's been having this long affair with a married woman, and he goes right on having it, talking to her in the bathroom on a cellular phone. You know, he finally had to buy an $80,000 phone, so he could only drug lords buy this phone, so that nobody can eavesdrop on it.
But let's go back to childhood. In the common theme with all these women is that they really had unhappy childhoods. Diana, a broken home.
Yes.
Marilyn, virtually an orphan.
Certainly had a
Judy, a broken home.
And difficulties with her mom.
And then they relate to men who are either older than themselves or just don't care about them. And it seems to me that it's this relationship between the mother and then the husband, which is actually messed up their lives.
The suicide attempts. I mean, when you start with Marilyn Monroe, suicide attempt. Judy, suicide.
I'm not sure. I'm not convinced of that at all.
You don't think she ever tried to?
No, I'm not. I think
even at the worst times when she went into Payne Whitney and her wrists were bandaged?
Her wrists weren't bandaged because of a suicide attempt, Joan. Her wrists were bandaged by the people at Payne Whitney. I mean, what she did was she broke a door in order to get to an adjacent bathroom, and in so doing, she also broke a chair and cut herself on the arm. I mean, this is all documented.
Yeah.
You know. So she really, the suicide attempt is I think, on very shaky
ground. Can a woman have all this power, all this glory, and be happy? Is there anyone besides me?
You better take a bow.
I feel so lonely.
I think they can if they meet somebody who is of the same importance sometimes. Although, again, with Marilyn and Joe, that was rocky, certainly at the beginning. I don't know, it's very difficult to have those kinds of professional demands and then personal demands. You expect, Judy, you'd be a mother, you'd be a wife, you'd be a living legend. And, in what order are you supposed to do that?
Yeah, they have to be larger than life all the time. And I think finally it just distorts everything. They can't really have any private life.
They can't go home and drink milk and cookies after they've fractured 25,000 people in a concert.
I don't know if you can't.
And there's another thing here, too. Marilyn, God bless her, was only 36 years old when she died. With all due respect to the young, life is just sort of coming into an arc of change and growth when you're 36. She was just getting started. She had an experience on which to reflect and to move forward with.
Okay. We'll be back with more in a moment, so please stay tuned. Some of our guests stay at the beautiful Plaza Hotel overlooking Central Park. Promotional fees provided by...
Jonelle presents salon-style sculptured nails. Easy to apply, just stick it, buff it, gel it, set it. You'll love it. Gel nails from Jonelle.
For beautiful, longer-lasting perms and hair color, use Curls and Color from Lanza Research. The ultimate in perm and color care. Only at better salons. We are talking about the private lives of some of the true princesses of Britain and of Hollywood. If any one of the four of you, each of you, could meet one of these ladies, what would you say to her?
I think I met Judy when I was 16, and I think what I'd want to know now is, did I do her justice? Is this how she wanted what she accomplished to be put down? Because that was the idea. I don't want to tell tales. I just want people to know about her talent.
What about you? If you could meet anyone, would you want to meet Marilyn?
I would love to have met Marilyn, and although I know her now, I feel I would have asked her where would she like to spend a quiet weekend with friends.
Right. Okay. Liz, who would you like to meet?
Well, I'd like to meet Princess Diana. I think she's one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen from pictures, and I'd like to know a beautiful woman named Squidgy, you know. And I'd like to encourage her to move to America. She could have such a great career
and
here.
To buy the royal family cards.
Right.
And what about you, if you could meet any of them?
Well, I'd love to meet Marilyn Monroe, and I'd love to say to her, how about dinner?
How about dinner? Very basic. I thank you all very much, and I'm sorry that I'm happy, but I'm not as famous as these ladies, so let's hope I stay at this level. I thank you, and we'll be right back. No, we won't. We're going off. We're not going to have any more gossip. I have a great weekend on Monday's show. Outrageous, new, crazy, crazy phases and fads for the 90s, from grunge to human bowling. You'll see it on Monday. Have a good weekend.